The battle, if you could call it that, lasted no more than a few seconds. The two mounted warriors spurred towards each other, the hooves of their battle horses thundering on the unsealed surface of the road, clods of dirt spinning in the air behind them, and dust rising in a plume to make their passage. The Gallic knight had his lance extended. Holt could now see the fault that Horace had picked in the other man's technique. Held too tightly at the early stage, the lance point swayed and waved with the horse's movement. A lighter, more flexible hold on the weapon might have kept its point centered on its target. As it was, the lance dipped and rose and wobbled with every stride of the horse. Horace, on the other hand, rode easily, his sword resting on his shoulder, content to conserve his strength until the time for action came. They approached each other, shield to shield, as was normal. Holt half expected to see Horace repeat the maneuver he'd used against Morgarth and spin his horse to the other side at the last moment. However, the apprentice kept on, maintaining the line of attack. When he was barely 10 meters away, the sword arced down from its set rest position, the point descending a circle in the air. Then, as the lance dip came towards Horace's shield, the sword, still circling, caught the lance neatly and flicked it up and over the boy's head. It looked deceptively easy, but Holt realized as he watched that the boy was truly a natural weapon master. The Gallic knight braced for the expected impact of his lance on Horace's shield, suddenly found himself heaving his body forward against no resistance at all. He swayed, feeling himself topping from the saddle. In a desperate attempt at self-preservation, he grappled at his saddle pommel. It was bad luck that he chose to do so with his right hand, which was also trying to maintain control of the unwieldy lance. Twisted upward by Horace's circling sword point, it was now describing a giant arc of its own. He couldn't manage his balance and the lance at the same time, and a muffled curse came from inside the helmet as he was forced to let the lance drop. Enraged, he groped blindly for the hilt of his own sword, trying to drag it clear of its scabbard for the second pass. Unfortunately for him, there was to be only one pass. Hutch shook his head in silent admiration as Horace, the lance taken out of the play, instantly hauled Kicker to rearing spinning stop, using the knees and his shield hand on the reins to wheel the horse on its hind legs before the Gallic knight had gone past him, the sword still describing those easy circles that kept his wrist fluid and light. Now it arced round once more and slammed into the back of the other man's helmet with a loud ringing clang. Holt twitched, imagining what it must sound like from inside the steel pot. It was too much to expect that a single blow might shear through the tough metal. It would take a series of heavy strokes to accomplish that, but it put a severe dent in the helmet, and the concussion of the blow went straight through the steel to the skull of the knight wearing it. Unseen by the two Arrowlands, his eyes glazed out of focus, went slightly crossed, then snapped back again. Then very slowly he toppled sideways out of the saddle, crashed onto the dust of the road, and lay there unmoving. His horse continued galloping for a few more meters, then realizing that nobody was urging it on any longer, it slowed to a walk, lowered its head, and began cropping the long grass by the roadside. Horace trotted his horse back slowly, stopping level with the point where the Gallic knight lay, sprawled on the road. "I told you he wasn't very good," he said quite seriously to Holt. The ranger, who prided himself on his normal tactician manner, couldn't prevent a wide grin breaking out across his face. Well, perhaps not. Well, perhaps he's not, he told the earnest young man before him, but you certainly looked reasonably efficient there. Horace shrugged. It's what I'm trained for, he replied simply. Holt realized that the boy just didn't have a boastful bone in his body. Battle school had certainly had a good effect to him. He gestured to the knight, now beginning to regain consciousness. The man's arm and legs made weak, uncoordinated little movements, giving him the appearance of a half-dead crab. It's what he's supposed to be trained for too, he replied, then added, Well done, young Horace. The boy flushed with pleasure at Holt's praise. He knew the ranger wasn't one to hand out idle compliments. So what do we do with him now? He asked, indicating his fallen foe with the tip of his sword. Holt slipped quickly down from the saddle and moved towards the man. Let me take care of that, he said. It'll be my pleasure. He grabbed hold of the fallen man by the arm and dragged him into a sitting position. The dazed knight mumbled inside the helmet, and now that he had time to notice such details, Horace could see that the ends of the moustache protruded from either side of the closed visor. Thank you, sir, the knight mumbled incoherently, as Holt dragged him to a more or less upright sitting position. His feet scrabbled on the road as he tried to stand, but Holt shoved him back down, none too gently. None of that, thank you, the ranger said. He reached under the man's chin, and Horace realized that he had the smaller of his two knives in his hand. For a moment, the horrified boy was convinced that Holt meant to cut the man's throat. Then, with a deft stroke, Holt severed the leather chin strap holding the helmet on the other man's head. Once the strap was cut, Holt dragged the helmet off and tossed it into the bushes at the roadside. The knight let out a small meow of pain as his moustache ends tugged free of the still-closed visor. Horace sheathed his sword, finally sure that there was no further threat from the knight. For his part, the vanquished warrior peered owlishly at Holt and at the figure towering over them, both on horseback. His eyes still wouldn't focus. We shall continue the simbit and foot, he declared shakily. Holt slapped him heartily on his back, setting his eyes spinning once more. The hell you will, you're beaten, my friend, top fair and square. Sir Horace, Knight of the Oakleaf du Filet de Chenier, has agreed to spare your life. Oh, thank you, said the unsteady one, making a vague, saluting gesture in Horace's direction. However, Holt went on, allowing a grim tone of amusement to creep into his voice. Under the rules of chivalry, your arms, armor, horse, and other belongings are forfeited to Sir Horace. They are? Horace asked, a little incredulously. Holt nodded. They are. The knight tried once more to stand, but as before Holt held him down. But, sir, he protested weakly, my arms and armor, surely not. Surely so, Holt replied. The other man's face, already shaken and pale, now looked even paler as he realized the full import of what the grey-cloaked stranger was saying. Halt, Horace interrupted. Won't he be a little helpless without his weapons and his horse? Yes, he certainly will, was the satisfied reply, which will make it a great deal harder for him to prey on innocent travellers who want to cross this bridge. Realization dawned on Horace. Oh, he said thoughtfully, I see. Exactly, Holt said, looking meaningfully at him. You've done a good day's work here, Horace. Mind you, he added, it took you barely 2 minutes to do it, but you'll keep this predator out of business and make the road a little bit safer for the locals. And of course, we will now have quite an expensive suit of chain of mail, a sword, a shield, and a pretty good-looking horse to sell in the next village we come to. You're sure that's in the rules? Horace asked, and Holt smiled broadly at him. Oh yes, it's all fair and above board. He knew it. He simply should have looked more carefully when he challenged us. Now, my beauty, he said to the crestfallen knight sitting at his feet, let's have that mail shirt off you. Grudgingly, the dazed knight began to comply. Holt beamed at his young companion. I'm starting to enjoy Gallica a lot more than I expected, he said. Okay, well, thank you for listening to me read chapter 16. If you'd like to listen to me read chapter 17, then please stay posted and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.